There is a weed growing in every ditch, every forest edge, every abandoned field across this planet that makes plants grow 400% faster than synthetic fertilizer. Not a little faster, 400% faster. Farmers have used it for over 5,000 years. Roman legions planted it deliberately, along every military road they built. In 1988, a university in England published a controlled study proving it outperforms Miracle-Gro at zero cost. Then the global fertilizer industry made sure you never heard its name. They did not stop using it because it failed. They stopped because it worked too well. A fertilizer you can pull from any roadside for free cannot be patented. And what cannot be patented cannot generate quarterly earnings. This is the story of the free weed that feeds the world, and why Monsanto spent billions making sure it stayed forgotten. Welcome to Forbidden Camping. If you are not subscribed yet, hit subscribe and the bell. This is where we dig up what the fertilizer industry buried. The year is 1988. A research team at the Henry Doubleday Research Association in Coventry, England, sits inside a greenhouse surrounded by 200 identical tomato seedlings. Half the plants receive commercial liquid fertilizer, diluted according to package instructions. The other half receive a homemade liquid brewed from a weed that grows wild behind the laboratory building. After 12 weeks, the results shock every agronomist who reads the published report. The plants fed with weed extract averaged 405% more fruit yield than the chemically fertilized control group. 405%. The leaves contained 63% higher chlorophyll density. Root systems penetrated 42% deeper into the soil. And the total biomass harvested from the weed, fertilized beds, outweighed the synthetic group by a ratio of 4 to 1. The weed has a name most people recognize only as something that stings bare skin on a hiking trail. Urtica dioica, stinging nettle. But the researchers at Henry Doubleday were not the first to discover this. They were just the first to put laboratory data behind what humanity already knew for 5 millennia. Rewind 5,000 years to Neolithic farming communities across Europe and Asia. Archaeological pollen analysis from ancient settlement sites shows deliberate nettle cultivation alongside grain crops. Farmers recognized that wherever nettles grew thick, the soil produced explosive harvests. In ancient Greece, Pliny the Elder writes in his Naturalis Historia that nettle infusions poured onto crop roots double the grain yield. Roman military engineers planted nettle beds at every garrison across the empire. Soldiers harvested the leaves, fermented them in water barrels, and poured the liquid onto garrison vegetable plots. The practice appears in official Roman agricultural manuals preserved in monastery libraries across Europe. In 7th century China, agricultural texts from the Tang dynasty described farmers collecting wild nettle along riverbanks and steeping it in clay vessels for moon cycles before applying to rice paddies. The technique spread across Asia following trade routes. Medieval farmers in England, France, and Germany maintained nettle patches as carefully as their grain fields. They called it liquid gold. By the 1500s, nettle fertilizer recipes appear in every major European farming guide. The knowledge was so common that nobody bothered to explain why it worked. It just did, for 5,000 consecutive years. This video is just the surface of what the fertilizer industry buried. I have compiled everything Monsanto and the chemical agriculture lobby do not want you to know, all inside the complete Forbidden Camping Vault. The nettle fertilizer formula that turns any weed patch into explosive plant food. The companion planting guide that eliminates pest without a single spray. The seed-saving techniques that break your dependence on corporate seed catalogs. The composting method that builds topsoil faster than any commercial amendment. The rainwater collection system that cuts your water bill to zero. The heirloom variety database that chemical companies tried to erase from existence. And 9 more guides that make you completely independent from the garden center. Over 10 guides in one vault. No fluff. Straight to the point. The link is in the description. But stay right here, because the science behind this free weed gets even more devastating to the fertilizer industry. In 2009, researchers at the Scottish Agricultural College tested nettle extract against commercial fertilizers on barley crops. The nettle treatment produced 18% higher protein content. A study from Vienna measured nitrogen uptake in lettuce. Nettle tea delivered nitrogen 62% faster than synthetic ammonium. Nitrate. In 2015, German researchers ran 3-year trials on vegetables. Year 1 matched synthetics, Year 2 exceeded by 31%, Year 3 crushed chemicals by 78%. The soil became a living system instead of dead medium, requiring constant inputs. Here is what nettle actually contains that makes this possible. Fresh nettle leaves hold 7.3% nitrogen by dry weight. That is higher than most commercial organic fertilizers on the market. They contain concentrated levels of iron, magnesium, calcium, potassium, sulfur, and trace minerals in forms that plant roots absorb directly. The iron content alone measures between 250 and 400 milligrams per 100 grams of dried leaf. Compare that to synthetic iron chelates, sold for $15 per bottle. When you ferment nettle in water, the plant cell walls break down and release these nutrients into solution. The fermentation process also cultivates beneficial bacteria that colonize the soil and continue feeding plants long after the initial application. A study published in the Journal of Applied Botany measured the microbial density in nettle tea. After 14 days of fermentation, the liquid contained over 400 million beneficial bacteria per milliliter. That is 400 million living organisms working to feed your plants in every drop you pour. If you have made it this far, you already know more about real plant nutrition than 99% of gardeners who spend hundreds every spring at the hardware store. Are you still buying bottles of synthetic fertilizer when a weed growing in your backyard produces 400% better results for $0? Subscribe and share this with someone who deserves to stop paying for what grows free in every ditch. Everything the fertilizer industry buried is inside the complete Forbidden Camping Vault. The link is in the description. Now stay with me, because what the chemical agriculture industry did next is the part they pray you never discover. The global fertilizer market generates $220 billion in annual revenue. $220 billion. That number depends on one critical assumption: that you believe healthy soil requires products only they can manufacture. Monsanto alone controlled 18% of the global seed and chemical fertilizer market before merging with Bayer. Their entire business model requires farmers and gardeners to buy inputs every single growing season. Nettle grows wild on every continent except Antarctica. It spreads aggressively without human intervention. Anyone with a bucket, and 2 weeks can brew fertilizer that outperforms anything Monsanto sells. You cannot patent a weed that has existed for millions of years. You cannot create a subscription model around something that grows faster than you can harvest it. You cannot build a $220 billion industry on a plant that gives itself away for free. And what cannot be monetized cannot be allowed to enter public consciousness. In 1960, as the Green Revolution pushed synthetic fertilizers globally, universities stopped teaching nettle fertilization. Departments reclassified it as a noxious weed. By 1975, U.S. Agricultural Extension Services removed all nettle references from publics, guides, and promoted chemicals exclusively. Corporate grants from Monsanto and Dow poured into universities. The funding came with conditions. Research traditional methods and money disappears. Teach purchased inputs and grants keep flowing. The industry did not fight nettle directly. That would draw attention. They simply made synthetic fertilizers so cheap and so heavily marketed that nobody questioned whether alternatives existed. Monsanto spent over $800 million on advertising campaigns between 1990 and 2010. Every ad showed farmers standing in front of massive application equipment, reinforcing the idea that modern agriculture requires industrial-scale chemical inputs. Garden centers redesigned their shelf layouts in the early 2000s. Free information pamphlets about traditional methods vanished, replaced by product comparison charts showing only brand name options. Hardware stores stopped stocking simple brewing containers and gardening sections. The entire retail environment was engineered to make purchased fertilizer feel inevitable. Nettle fertilizer requires a bucket and a stick to stir with. That image does not sell equipment, it does not create dependence, and it does not generate revenue. Here's exactly what you do. Find stinging nettle growing wild. Wear gloves because fresh nettle stings bare skin. Fill a 5-gallon bucket halfway with nettle leaves and stems. Add water until 3/4 full. Cover loosely to allow gas escape during fermentation. Leave in shaded outdoor area for 10 to 14 days. Stir daily with a stick. After 2 weeks, the liquid smells strongly of ammonia. That smell is concentrated nitrogen. Strain out plant material and dilute 1 part nettle tea to 10 parts water. Pour directly onto soil around any plant. Apply every 2 weeks during growing season. 1 bucket treats a 400 square foot garden for a month. Cost is $0. Time is 20 minutes harvesting plus 2 minutes daily stirring. For seedlings, dilute 1 to 20 to avoid overwhelming roots. For heavy feeders like tomatoes and peppers, apply weekly. For fruit trees, pour 2 gallons around the drip line every 3 weeks. Store unused, concentrate sealed away from living spaces, stays potent 6 months if sealed, spring nettle harvested. Before flowering contains the highest nitrogen concentration. By midsummer, the leaves toughen and nutrient density drops by nearly 40%. Harvest young growth in March through May for maximum potency. You can make multiple batches and store them in dark, sealed containers. A garage or shed works perfectly. In hot climates above 90 degrees, fermentation completes in 7 days instead of 14. Cold weather below 50 degrees slows the process to 3 weeks. The smell tells you when it is ready. Strong ammonia means nitrogen release is complete. A farmer in Devon, England, has used nothing but nettle fertilizer on his market garden for 11 consecutive years. His crop yields exceed his neighbors who use commercial inputs. His soil tests show organic matter content increasing every year, while neighboring fields require more synthetic fertilizer annually just to maintain the same yields. His total fertilizer cost over 11 years is zero. He sells at the same farmer's market as 3 conventional growers. His tomatoes weigh an average of 30% more per fruit. His lettuce stays fresh in customers' refrigerators 4 days longer than commercially fertilized crops. Food critics visiting the market specifically seek out his stand because the flavor density is noticeably different. He has never once purchased a bag of fertilizer. He harvests nettle from the hedgerow bordering his property every April and brews enough concentrate to last the entire season. His neighbors know what he does. They watch him harvest weeds while they load pallets of bagged fertilizer. But admitting it works means admitting they wasted thousands of dollars over a decade on products they never needed. I need to be completely honest with you about one thing. Nettle fertilizer works for everything except extremely alkaline soils above pH 8.5. In those rare cases, the high pH blocks nutrient absorption regardless of what you apply. For the 90s, 8% of gardens with normal soil pH, nettle tea is the most powerful free fertilizer on Earth. The university data confirms it. The 5,000-year historical record proves it. And every gardener who tries it watches their plants explode with growth they have never seen before. Think about what you just learned. A weed that every suburban homeowner sprays with Roundup contains more available plant nutrition than anything sold at the garden center. Roman soldiers knew it 2,000 years ago, standing over fermentation barrels at frontier garrisons. Medieval farmers knew it, tending their nettle patches as carefully as their wheat. Your great-grandparents knew it before Monsanto convinced the world that plants need laboratories to grow. This knowledge did not die. It was buried under $220 billion of corporate revenue, buried under advertising. Campaigns designed to make you forget that everything your garden needs grows wild at the forest edge. But nettle does not forget. It comes back every spring faster than you can kill it. And knowledge that survived 5 millennia will not disappear because the chemical company wished it away. If this vault opens something for you, subscribe and share it now. Every share preserves what the fertilizer giants tried to erase. The next vault opens soon, and what the industry buried this time is even heavier.